says we are live on the internet. Hello. Hi. This is the return of the Lateral Show with Herms. I am Herms. This is the Lateral Show. Here's a video. Look at that video.
Woohoo!
Get a load of that video.
I
There
love
it is, everybody. Welcome back to the return of the Lateral Show with Herms. It is your host, Herms. I am Herms. I work over at Draft Sharks. That is what I do during the day. You can follow me on Twitter at Herms NFL. And this is a show about football because, I don't know, I already talk enough about fantasy football during the day. Why not talk about just regular football at
American
night?
football or soccer or
This is an XFL show. I hope you've been studying up.
Yes. There we go.
At first, we will be going over exactly how good the Las Vegas Vipers have been, or whatever. I don't even.
Have you guys seen this Josh Gordon kid?
Never heard of him.
Ben DiNucci?
Ben, you got to do this. You got to Ben DiNucci.
I'm sorry, Herms. Go ahead with the intro.
It's one. Yeah, well, look, so if you listen to the old version of this show, you're going to notice that there's one fewer person here with me. That is my friend Malcolm. He actually has a different job outside of sports, and I'm sure he's very glad to not be part of this wonderful version of whatever the hell this is. But, I wanted to continue the legacy of the show, do whatever. So if you don't remember me or anything that we did before, it actually doesn't matter because this is technically a different show. But basically every single week that I have the free time to do this, we will do three things. Have three people talking about three topics about the NFL, and then the third thing that happens is the show ends. So that's pretty much the format. Three people, three NFL topics. Whatever happens after that, happens after that. So joining me for the inaugural voyage of this is first on the screen over there. His name is Dave Kluge. He works at Footballguys, and he lives in a different place than I do. Hello, Dave. How are you doing?
How's it going, Herms? Always a pleasure to hop on a screen and talk some ball with you. It's been a crazy week, man. Doing this on a Thursday evening, the week of NFL free agency. I'd be in bed right now if it wasn't for this show, man. I am exhausted. It has been a crazy, crazy week.
Yeah, it certainly has. And as I found out not too long ago, I am not the only person who only recently woke up from an accidental nap. So I feel you. Okay. I feel you, dude. This is really starting to get the better of me as well. But to kind of balance things out a little bit, for some reason that I haven't come up with yet, below me is our friend Jay. You can find his work and doing his stuff over with the Front Yard Fantasy crew, with the Bettor Sports Network and all their stuff that they do over there as well. Jay, what is up, my guy?
Yeah, speaking of the guy who just woke up, it's been a long week for me as well. Anybody who has children knows with the time change, it's turned my lovely children into little monsters. It's been a rough week. We're leaving for Tennessee in the morning. I took a nice little 30-minute power nap right before we hopped on, so I'm ready to roll now. I did at least set an alarm on my phone because I know that I generally fall asleep in the bed, and so I wasn't going to miss it as long as I had my alarm set.
There we go. See, that's what it's all about. Preparedness and making sure that everything is in place so that everything can go as swimmingly as possible. Which is not so much what we plan to do with this show because, plot twist, one of the promises is that there's no show notes. There's no preparation. This is just shooting off of the cuff, talking about football because we like football. So there it is. A surprise that I decided to drop here because, again, we are professionals. We're very good at this. Before we get into the first topic, we have some people in the comments. Hello, Craig. Hello. Hi. Nice to see you. Oh, yes. Taylor, yes, it is true that Dave's hair does look immaculate. Just always does for the most part, always doing well. Matt Chester out here shouting out the Ben DiNucci. Yeah, it's very phonetic. Love that. So yeah, there we go. That is the beginning of the show. Now we get into the part of the show that's different, and we start. Okay.
The end?
Yeah, sure. I guess I don't know. So we start with our first topic because the quarterback carousel has gone crazy throughout the last several days. There are a lot of new quarterbacks in new places. I know that the first domino to fall, if I remember correctly, was like Derek Carr going to the Saints. I know that we've got a couple other things going on as well. But my question to each of you, Dave, I will start with you. Which NFL team has helped themselves the most in terms of what they've done with different quarterback type moves?
Oh, with different quarterback type moves.
Yes.
Can I take it a little bit like a different interpretation of the question? Because I think that what
Sure.
the Denver Broncos have done has helped their quarterback in Russell Wilson. The biggest problem that they had last year is they had a terrible coach and a terrible offensive line, and they have spent a ton of money on offensive line, and they brought in Sean Payton. So I don't know if maybe I answered the question wrong, but immediately when I saw what team helped their quarterback the most, my mind immediately went to the Denver Broncos.
I mean, that's a good point. I mean, especially, dude, I did not think they were going to go particularly hard just because I don't know, like they've already done so many big picture move things over the last couple of years. I mean, even getting Russell Wilson there in the first place and going out and getting Sean Payton and the number of draft picks that they've had to disperse everywhere. You know, I was just like, maybe some subtle things here and there. But like to your point, dude, like the O-line's much beefier. Like, even though it kind of sucks that who knows when Javonte Williams comes back or whatever, but Samaje Perine going to be competent in the interim. Like, I think that'll be pretty good. That is such a good call. That's very smart.
Brought in Mike McGlinchey. I mean, that was the guy that every single team that needed a tackle was hoping for Mike McGlinchey. And they said, we are going to make sure that we get him. We're going to give him 80 million reasons to come play in Denver. And then, I mean, we already talked about Sean Payton a little bit, but I think that, you know, we're actually going to be looking at a revived Russell Wilson this season.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I think that I'm going to have a lot of shares of Russell Wilson this year because there's a lot of people that are completely out on him. And Herms, to your point, you know, they have given up a whole lot, but at this point, they're all in. You know, what they had to do to get Russell Wilson, the money that they had to pay him, like they've got to do. They've just got to do it. Like otherwise, they, you know, sitting in limbo and nobody wants to do that.
And even if they do end up doing the thing that has been kind of whispered throughout, you know, the Twitter streets a little bit from some of the insiders, even if they move on from one of Jerry Jeudy or Courtland Sutton, it's not like it erases the impact of all of the other things that they've done as well. And it would only, you know, help them supplement some of the picks that they may have lost along the way otherwise. So they've set themselves up in such a position that, like, I'm pretty impressed. I mean, it's a tough division no matter what, but
if they move on from Sutton or Jeudy, people forget about Tim Patrick. I mean, Tim Patrick was presumed, like some people were saying he was going to be the wide receiver one last year. That might have been a little bit audacious. I don't know if he's going to step in as the wide receiver one, but Tim Patrick is a baller. So if they can ship off Courtland Sutton, who probably has some pretty good perceived trade value on the market right now, I think Tim Patrick could step into the Courtland Sutton role and be just as effective.
Yeah, and with Tim Patrick, they also have KJ Hamler, who's a capable wide receiver. You know, Dulcich.
About Dulcich.
Yeah, exactly. So they're even, you know, you hate to lose either one of Sutton or Jeudy, but they'll be just fine pass catcher wise.
Dude, look at that. Such a good answer to the first question. We are already off to such a hot start. This is incredible. Oh my gosh, Jay, can you keep that ball rolling? You can take it the way that, you know, Dave did, or if you just want to take it literally based on the quarterback thing, but like what team really helped themselves the most?
I'm going to go kind of both. I'm going to go the quarterback route, but not a specific quarterback yet. I'm going to go with the Carolina Panthers. I love the boldness of making the move to go up to one to get their guy. You know, we see too many teams that are willing to just go with the retreads, the Baker Mayfields, you know, sorry, Simon, I know you're in the chat. They gave up a lot, but you know, they're not just going to be sitting there and like they've dealt with Sam Darnold, Baker, like all these guys that they're just trying to get on a deal. You know, they're looking for their quarterback of the future. You know, I have a feeling it's going to be Anthony Richardson that they take. But hey, there you go, Jordan. I know you're happy. I just love it. You know, either it works out and they get the quarterback of the future, or it's going to blow up in their face. They're going to be terrible, and then they're going to be back in the same position again. So I would much rather go for it, try to get that, you know, that stud quarterback, that franchise quarterback that everybody's looking for, than just be stuck in the middle and picking the teams and just kind of a middling team.
Did you hear what Adam Schefter had to say today about the Carolina Panthers? He said that they traded up for number one because they are in love with Bryce Young, the same way that the San Francisco 49ers were in love with Mac Jones.
Oh, no.
Oh,
yeah. Let that marinate for a second and think about it. So he said,
so
right
they're
now,
not drafting like Bryce Young. Then,
right? He said early in the process, it seems like they like Bryce Young, but he thinks that they're going to fall in love with somebody else before the draft and pivot off of Bryce Young.
Okay, huh?
It
And
sounded like something that you just say for ratings, if I'm
right.
being
Well,
honest, but I thought it was
and
interesting.
Schefter's been like that a lot more lately here. And yeah, there's also been rumors that they might, if somebody offers them a king's ransom, if they fall in love with somebody, that they might trade back to 3 or 4, and if they're okay with a couple of these guys, and get some compensation back. So yeah, it's possible if they, like you said, if they love Young and then find out they like Richardson or Stroud too, it'd be interesting to see.
And I think, especially specifically with the Panthers and a little bit of foreshadowing because they're not the only team that's kind of done it this way. But just knowing that you have a plan in place already, just super early on, of having some sort of veteran and some sort of young guy that are like pretty well paired together. It's such a sound strategy. One of the things that I'm going to bring up is one of those examples. Also, I mean, like, PJ Walker coming in to challenge Justin Fields, also a perfect example of this. But Andy Dalton coming in, to be there, whether it's as a bridge option, if they go, some sort of crazy route, because like you said, Dave, like if we're following the, the way that the Niners loved Mac Jones logic, then I guess that would imply that it would play out with the Panthers.
Anthony Richardson.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it would fall down the same train tracks at that point. So, yeah. Oh, God. That would be kind of weird. I don't know if that's going to happen per se, but, you never know with these people sometimes.
I will say, as we like to say over at Front Yard Fantasy, PJ Walker has that Peach to Deej connection with DJ Moore, so you might have to watch out, Justin Fields.
How do I have like the Tony Reale button where I could just mute Jay right now?
Oh my god. Well, unfortunately, I only have that ability. But next time you besmirch
Oh,
any sort of name,
I'll mute myself. Hold on.
There we go. Somebody has to. Yeah. Sometimes you got to punish yourself. But yeah, I think this has been off to a very good start. I definitely like the direction that we're going in. So I'm going to throw in something that is not nearly as exciting, but just relates to the things that I've dealt with my entire life, living in the greater DC metro area. Jacoby Brissett coming in to compete with Sam Howell. Look, I know this is not the most appealing answer to the question, but I think the reason it helped them in such a tremendous way is because I think this is probably the first time that the Commanders have done the most competent thing possible for their specific situation that I can ever remember. Because like coming into this offseason, we saw the rumblings that when they were looking to hire an offensive coordinator, their whole thing was, yeah, we're selling this as Sam Howell's our quarterback. If you take this job, you're going to have to deal with Sam Howell. And at first I see that and I'm just like, okay, why would you? Okay. All right, cool. Somehow they get Eric Bieniemy to show up. And then I'm thinking, well, I mean, he's probably going to be good at this, but I don't know how much he's going to get done with just Sam Howell around, because what are they going to do? Bring back Taylor Heineke, something else? But like Jacoby Brissett, like it was only 11 starts last year, if I remember correctly, right? But he was good with the Browns, like legitimately very good, to the point that like I was very surprised. I mean, the year that he had it with the Colts however long ago, like he was okay, but he looks like somebody that could actually be pretty competent and give Sam Howell an even longer leash. If he doesn't win that job outright out of camp, you could confidently start Jacoby Brissett for maybe like, I don't know, 5-6 games or something like that, and just prolong that developmental process. And I'm just, dude, I think that's pretty cool. I think that's pretty cool.
Like you said, it was a smart move for once for them. And to be fair to Jacoby Brissett, the year he was starting for the Colts, I mean, 2 weeks before the season, it was supposed to be Andrew Luck starting. So that say what you want about Jacoby Brissett, I like the guy, but he's no Andrew Luck. That offense was not built for him. I think it's a smart move too. I was about to say the RED word. The Commanders, their defense did kind of take a step back last year, but they still have one of the better defenses in the NFL. They've got the weapons on offense. If they just have a competent quarterback, they can make some noise.
The sad news is they might be just good enough that even if this goes south, they're probably going to screw themselves out of a top pick, which is one of the things that I kind of pointed out on Twitter, because it was like, all right, this is cool, but like, in a weird way, their own competence is working against them because my whole thought process with the Sam Howell thing was like, oh, well, screw it. If this doesn't work, then they'll just be in line for Caleb Williams or Drake May or something next year. But then it's like, but Brissett's like good. Oh, damn it. What do either of you kind of think about that notion? Just like it's smart, but did they do something a little bit too smart for where they're at in terms of, I don't know if I call it a rebuild because they've been at this for a while, but just in terms of their path of reviving the franchise.
I mean, it seems like every single year Jacoby Brissett is looked at as a backup or a bridge quarterback, and then he surprises people. And we've been seeing this since his New England days. Like, he just keeps going out and playing good football. So it wouldn't surprise me if he outright wins the job in camp. And I mean, it's crazy to even think about, but this is arguably, Terry McLaurin's going into year 5 of his career, and Jacoby Brissett is probably the best quarterback that he'll have ever played with. I mean, we saw the difference last year. Cleveland looked really good when they had Jacoby Brissett, and then they pulled him out, put Deshaun Watson in, and the entire offense sputtered. So Jacoby Brissett's a weird guy because he doesn't, pop off the screen. He doesn't have elite athleticism. He doesn't have a great arm, but he's just so good at finding the open guy and hitting them that he just wins football games, and the team rallies around him. And it seems like he is the most beloved guy in the locker room everywhere he goes. So I'm with you. It's kind of a strange move, and it shows, a lot of people think this can just help with Sam Howell's development, but I think that Jacoby Brissett ends up being the starter.
Oh, such a fun controversy so early in the offseason. Dude, this is why I love talking about football. This is why we rebranded the show. That is the end of the first topic, unless anybody has any final notes on the quarterback carousel section of this. Shout them out if you got them.
The one thing I'll say is Jimmy Garoppolo in Las Vegas. I'm going to take any chance I can possibly slander Josh McDaniels, and I'm going to do it right now. We have seen Joe Judge, Matt Patricia. We saw Josh McDaniels do it when he was in Denver. All of these coaches that leave New England try to bring in old Patriots players to implement the Patriots way, and it never works out. You'd think that after every single ex-assistant has face planted on their new team, you'd think they'd learn by now, but Josh McDaniels bringing in Jacoby Myers and Jimmy Garoppolo trying to recreate the same thing that has never, ever worked. I don't really have a point here. I just want to bash Josh McDaniels. The dude is a fake sharp, and I can't stand him.
Dave, no, I do have to say one thing. I would appreciate if you never said the name Joe Judge again in my presence. So
you remember?
I appreciate that. Yeah. So, how could I forget?
Oh my gosh. Although I will, speaking of the Raiders thing, I was talking about this earlier today, and weirdly still ties into the quarterback thing. Like, they're gonna end up pulling a suboptimal Commanders type move probably, right? Because a lot of the mock drafts that I've seen even after the combine still have them targeting Will Levis. But you already kind of signed like a decent dude. Isn't it kind of a reach at this point? That contract's pretty cool. You can roll with Garoppolo for a while. Why not wait and address that later on with a young guy? But I think the Raiders are just going to Raiders. And okay. To be fair, I don't know what Will Levis's 40 time was. I don't know if he's particularly fast. Maybe the Raiders won't love him as much if he's not running a 4.3. But that's just something to consider as well. They always do the most suboptimal thing. It always blows my mind. They're a weird place, absolutely weird place. But that's what Vegas does to people, man. That's what Vegas does to people. And always be careful in Las Vegas for many reasons. Which brings me to transitioning awkwardly to the next part of the show. Bam. Okay, so the thing that I had was fill in the blank. What were the blank thinking when they acquired blank? Because there have been a lot of really fun moves that have gone down, whether it's via trade or some free agent signings, but not all of them end up making sense. So just for example, there are some people that maybe thought, what were the Giants thinking when they acquired Darren Waller or something? Just something to throw out there. I'm not saying that specifically has to be it, but So Jay, I'll start with you this time.
I actually got to leave. I'm sorry.
But Jay, we'll start with you. Fill in the blanks of what were the blank thinking when they acquired blank.
So I'm actually going to echo what our friend Heath Cummings said. He was on our FanDuel show earlier today, and we talked about some of the free agent happenings. And I don't understand what the Lions are doing by giving that much money to David Montgomery. I feel like they could have, Jamal Williams did such a great job. He wouldn't have commanded as much money. You could have got somebody. David Montgomery, I think he's a solid player, but it doesn't make sense where they're at unless they, maybe they're really considering moving on from DeAndre Swift. Maybe he just doesn't fit in with the current culture of the team. That's the only way that I see this making sense. I feel like they could have invested the money somewhere else, especially as good as the offense already looked without David Montgomery. If they wanted to have a 1-2 punch with DeAndre Swift. So it was really surprising to see that much money be invested in the running back position for, somebody who's going to split the backfield.
You stole my thunder, Jay. That's the exact person that I was going to talk about when I saw this question.
I stole Heath's thunder, so he's the one who brought it up first.
And I could add to it. I just don't get it. And the weirdest, there are two narratives that I consistently see about David Montgomery. One is that he is this between the tackles, bruiser, and a plotter. That's not what I see in his game at all. I mean, he is very shifty out in space. He's a very good pass catcher. He's great on third down. So I feel like his skill set overlaps a lot with DeAndre Swift. People have this idea that he's just going to step right into the Jamal Williams role, and that's not what I see in David Montgomery at all. Granted, he never had a good offensive line in Chicago, so maybe we can see him a little bit different when he's actually looking at open lanes, but I just don't understand that. And the second narrative is people are talking about him being injury prone. This man has missed 4 games in his career. Like, he is as strong as you can be 4 games in the last 3 years. You don't see that type of, active percentage from almost any running back in the league. So I don't know. Maybe I just have a different perception of him because I've watched every single game as a Bears fan, but I don't think that he's this between the tackles, bruiser, plotter that everybody says. And he's shockingly reliant when it comes to being healthy week in and week out.
Yeah, I mean, and it's weird too for a team that, like, I feel like outside of this signing has gotten a lot of credit for doing some really good stuff. I mean, I know that as a Steelers fan, I was heartbroken to see my beloved only good cornerback on the team, Cam Sutton, signed that deal to go to Detroit. They're addressing the hell out of those needs on that side of the ball. That really frees up things that they can do with their first round picks and all of that stuff that they have working for them, especially because, if we remember that Rams trade sending, Matthew Stafford and them falling apart netted them, I think, the 6th pick in the draft on top of what they have later. Like, they're doing all of these really smart things. And then, like you said, like Montgomery, like, thankfully, this is, not too much of a fantasy show per se, so we don't have to speculate, well, what's going to happen with DeAndre Swift? But, like, just in terms of the types of players that they are, like we've been saying, like, they're very similar. Like, I don't know, like, does this preclude them from taking some sort of larger bodied back at some point on, like, day 2 or day 3 or something, and just having that be a 3-headed nightmare monster that doesn't make any sense?
I think that DeAndre Swift is gone. They have shown now over the last 3 years that he's just not a fit for this offense. He wasn't a fit for the offense when Matt Patricia was there. He hasn't been a fit for the offense with Dan Campbell. I think that if a team calls up Detroit and says, hey, you want a 4th round pick? I think DeAndre Swift is gone because they're not going to re-sign him after next year or after this year. This is his last year on his rookie deal. So I think they might try to recoup whatever losses that they have. It wouldn't shock me one bit if DeAndre Swift gets shipped out of town and they end up drafting Bijan in the 1st round.
Oof. Can you imagine Bijan on that offense? My goodness. They were tied, I believe, with the Chargers for the best odds of taking Bijan. So, maybe to your point, Dave, maybe that's part of the reason that they did go with David Montgomery is his reliability, because that is the exact opposite of what DeAndre Swift has been on the field.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I mean, at that point, if we're talking about complementary pieces, if we're going to play it that way, I would love a Bijan and a Montgomery at that. Like, that would be a lot of fun, especially because, like, for the type of skill set that Montgomery has, I mean, like, he's a thick boy. He can do the thick boy things. So it's like, the quads on that team and that running back room. Look out, world. Look out. Oh my gosh. But
I mean, the weapons that Jared Goff could have. I mean, could you imagine what it would be like to have Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, David Montgomery, and Bijan Robinson? I mean, Jared Goff is looking like a top 5 quarterback if that's his core of weapons.
That's unbelievable.
And then, like, with the way that division's trending, probably in an Aaron Rodgers-less world, like, who knows what's going to happen with the Vikings? I mean, they're already starting to shed some dead weight. I mean, Thielen's already gone. What happens with Dalvin Cook? I know that's a lot of money that they can save somehow if they choose to move on from him.
Cousins said that he's playing on his last year of his contract, so he could be gone after this year.
Mm-hmm.
It's time for Detroit, baby. Okay, I never watched the season of Hard Knocks before in my life. but I decided to watch this past offseason. It was the first time I'd ever seen it. God damn it, I'm rooting for them. I want them to
How
do
can you
so
not?
well. Like,
I'm a Bears fan, and I still it like warms my heart when Detroit does well, even in the same division. Don't like the Packers all that much, obviously, but
Dave.
like how you can't hate on Detroit. They're such a downtrodden franchise, and they have diehard fans. Living in Chicago, there are so many people. Well, not anymore, but when I did live in Chicago, so many people from Michigan and Detroit would move to Chicago because Detroit is just kind of a disappearing city. So everybody moves to Chicago for work. I had a ton of friends that were from Detroit, and they were a bit obnoxious at times, but at the same time, they are diehard fans. And it would, as much as I'd love the Bears to win the division and win a Super Bowl, I would be happy to see Detroit find a little bit of success.
How can you not like a guy like Dan Campbell, a guy who
Exactly.
he loves the guys on his team. He loves that team. Like it's easy to root for, even if they are in your division.
yeah, dude, 100%. And speaking of a fan base that has a lot of loyal and dedicated fans, I'm going to fill in my blank real quick, change up the order a little bit, because
Ooh.
I want to know what the Patriots were thinking when they acquired Juju for essentially the same amount of money that they could have spent to keep Jacoby Myers around. So we look already like the free agent wide receiver market was not going to be anything spectacular. We've been anticipating this for a long time. And I don't know. I kind of thought Jacoby Myers was going to get a bigger deal than this. He was the first domino to fall. So it was like, okay, I guess this is just what the market is. Cool. A couple other, signings trickle in and out or whatever. But then Juju Smith-Schuster gets announced going to New England. And I'm looking at the details of this and I'm like, they could have, that's the same money. What are you doing? And again, I've already established it in the history of this program and earlier on this episode specifically. I am a lifelong Pittsburgh Steelers fan. Always have been, always will be. And I love Juju. The early years of Juju were fantastic, but at a certain point, even I had to recognize and put my bias aside. This guy's not what I thought he could have been a few years ago, which is fine. He's still a competent NFL receiver. I think he'll do a pretty good job in New England, especially if Bill O'Brien comes in and actually restores that offense into something resembling a real offense, because having a defensive coordinator call plays last year was a really terrible idea. Belichick, what were you thinking?
Don't say the name. Don't say the name.
All right, it slipped. Okay, it's Voldemort rule for Billy B. Okay, got you.
No. The double J name.
Oh yes, of course. Yes, I will be sure to keep.
Thank you.
But yeah, dude, I just think if you're gonna make this type of move and pivot to something else and bring in that type of receiver, what was wrong with the guy you had in the first place? Objectively speaking, show of hands, if you think Jacoby Myers is better at this point than Juju Smith-Schuster. Okay, all right, we got a 1.5. All right, okay. So, all right.
Here, let me. I could take this for a second, Herms. I love Jacoby Myers, I really do, and I understand the dynasty and the fantasy football community's infatuation with him because the underlying metrics. His target share has been through the roof, but his target share was when he was competing against Nelson Aguilar and the ghost of Devontae Parker and Kendrick Bourne. I understand the mantra. Targets are earned. We hear this all the time. Targets are earned. Targets are earned. Targets are earned. We hear it so much that we just kind of parrot it without really thinking about it. Look at Alan Lazard last year. Career 12% target share. Devontae Adams leaves town. He jumps up to 21%. So targets are earned. But at the same time, it's easier to earn targets when you don't have a lot of target competition. So I think the Jacoby Myers underlying metrics have been inflated a little bit by having almost no competition in New England. And the one other thing I'll say, I'm not saying that Jacoby Myers is better than Juju Smith-Schuster. I don't think that one is really better than the other because they're different players. And right now, New England has a guy that can win on the outside in Devontae Parker. What they need is somebody that can get yards after the catch. And that's what they signed Jonnu Smith for, hoping he'd be that guy. And he did not work out. So they shipped him to Atlanta. So I think bringing in Juju Smith-Schuster, he can't beat press man coverage. He's not going to win routes 20, 30 yards downfield. But what he can do is take a screen 40 yards to the house. And they need that type of weapon on their offense that can get yards after the catch. So I'm not going to say that Juju Smith-Schuster is better than Jacoby Myers or Jacoby Myers is better than Juju Smith-Schuster because it's really comparing apples to oranges. I actually think that Juju Smith-Schuster might be a better fit for the Patriots offense.
Jay, thoughts?
Dave pretty much summed it up for me. I think that it makes more sense to have Juju in this offense. His explosiveness is something that they were lacking last year. I think bringing back Jacoby Myers would have been the safer play. But we saw this offense was completely broken last year. They had to do something different. I'm excited, and I've actually been targeting Mac Jones in a lot of places because everybody's leaving him for dead. And I think in a super flex league, I think he'll be a very serviceable quarterback 2. I picked him up as a quarterback 3 in a couple places. I traded for him. I'm excited for Bill O'Brien to be back in New England and see what he can do with Mac Jones. So, I don't think he's got top 10 upside or anything like that, but people are leaving him for dead, and that's just not going to be the case.
And I want to shout out Toronto Dave in the chat because I see him in here with Juju is such a good blocker. And that is spot on. Toronto Dave, really sharp football mind. Happy to see him chime in because I wanted to say that as well. That's what he does well. And Bill Belichick, he doesn't want just a pure receiver. He wants a good football player. And Juju Smith-Schuster might not put up the gaudiest stats, but he does the dirty work, and he's a good blocker. And, realistically, this team with Mac Jones isn't going to be throwing for 4,000 yards this year. They're not going to be lighting it up through the air. They're going to lean on Ramondre Stevenson and Pierre Strong, and maybe they bring Damian Harris back in. Whatever it is, they're probably going to lean on their run game, and Juju benefits that run game so much more than Jacoby Myers does.
It's the over-under of how many TikToks that Bill Belichick shows up on this year.
I saw some tweet that said it was obviously a joke, but they said Juju got a $10 million incentive in his contract if he deletes his TikTok.
So maybe it just is my Steelers fandom is swinging the pendulum too far in the other direction for me.
I've seen more people agree with you, honestly, at Herms on the Twitter. A lot of people are really upset with that and didn't understand why they didn't spend the money to keep Jacoby, but
I did run a poll saying who's the better wide receiver, Jacoby Myers or Juju Smith-Schuster, and Jacoby had over 60% of the votes. So I think the common conception is that Jacoby Myers is the better receiver. I wonder if I had worded that who's the better football player, who would have won the poll.
There we go. So, hey, we're going to have to see. Maybe there's going to be a follow-up poll at some point. We will see where that takes us for certain. So I know, Jay, you started out with something that was similar to what Dave was going to bring to the table. If you have a different fill in the blank that you would like to volunteer, the floor is yours. Otherwise, we can talk about something else.
It was actually flip-flop. I stole Dave's is what it was.
Yeah, Jay stole mine, but I can shoot from the hip here, and you guys waking up from a nap might not even have seen this news, but what were the Bears thinking when they signed Robert Tonyan? I mean, this team has I'm guessing you guys both missed that news. Maybe you did. Yeah.
Dang it.
I don't know what they were thinking here. I mean, Robert Tonyan is pretty much a carbon copy of Cole Kmet. And when I say carbon copy, I mean a very similar, but just duller player. I mean, he does everything that Cole Kmet does, but just not quite as good. This team has so many glaring weaknesses that they needed to fill. They need defensive line. They need offensive line. The one thing they didn't need is a pass catching tight end. So not the splashiest move. They only brought him in for, I think it was about $3 million, 1-year contract. But what were they thinking? Like they have so many pressing needs, and they brought in Robert Tonyan. Now, since you guys missed that news, I'm sure you also missed the Bears brought in Deonta Foreman.
I did see the Foreman. I did not see my Khalil Herbert shares don't like that, but I like the move for the Bears. So,
yeah, I'm a lot more. I'm kind of disappointed in both of those. Although one of them is selfishly from a fantasy perspective, the other one is just selfishly because I adore Cole Kmet and I just want to see him thrive. But also, just
we all love Cole Kmet.
I mean, who among us? We take a straw poll. I think it's going to be 100% everybody loves Cole Kmet. Like that is weird. I don't know. I'm not going to speak too much on it because it does kind of overlap with the third segment of the show. Spoilers, folks. We're all going to have an opportunity to talk about our favorite teams and how we feel they have done so far. But before we pivot off of that, is there anything else about this group of Bears signings specifically, or just anything else that we want to air our grievances on before the next segment?
Bringing up that Bears transaction sets us up perfectly for the next section.
There you go. Nice segue.
Natural transition.
Love it.
Nice and organic.
Look at that. There you go. So what we are going to do is grade our favorite teams offseason so far using the scale of 1 to 10. 1 being I am contemplating burning all of my jerseys, to 10 being, please point me to the nearest web URL link to buy all of the season tickets for the next 20 years. So scale of 1 to 10 for the Chicago Bears, for Mr. Dave Kluge, how you feeling?
I'm going to give him a 7. And that might be a little bit more rational than a lot of other Bears fans, because if you asked them on Monday, they were ready to give Ryan Poles the keys to the city. Everybody would have been given this in 11. And then you asked him yesterday evening, after we struck out on McGlinchey and Orlando Brown and all of the tackles that we thought we were going to get, then the city wanted Ryan Poles drawn and quartered. But realistically, the answer is somewhere in the middle, and I think that it's about a 7. And it starts with the amazing trade back from 1 to get, the number 9 overall pick in this draft, get next year's first round pick, get another 2 second-round picks on top of that, and DJ Moore. The Bears have a wide receiver 1 for the first time since Allen Robinson. We actually have a wide receiver 1, and he's only 25 years old, actually younger than Velus Jones Jr. I mean, I'm sorry, not younger. 1 month older, but they're close. But I am excited about what the Bears are doing. There's a few things that I'd like them to still do. Looking at like Isaac Siamalo, I would love if they were able to pick him up, because we do still need that tackle, and we haven't gotten that yet. And maybe they're just waiting for Skoronski at 9 in the draft. That would be really nice. But I'm getting a little worried right now. The 2 glaring weaknesses that we have are defensive line and offensive line, and they haven't really done anything to address that so far, besides Nate Davis, a guard on a pretty small contract. So I think that there's some moves that they can make there, but beefing up the pass catcher room, bringing in Deonta Foreman, bringing in 2 linebackers for cheaper than what Roquan Smith would have cost. And I love Tremaine Edmonds. I mean, going back to that draft where we took Roquan Smith, I wanted the Bears to take Tremaine Edmonds. And I think he was 19, 20 years old. He was young when he got drafted. So he had a slow start to his career, but he came on last year. He can do everything. He can fill the gaps in the run game. He can get 40 yards downfield and cover a wide receiver. I'm thrilled to have Tremaine Edmonds on the team. So still a little bit cautious because we haven't addressed the trenches so far, but really excited with some of the playmakers that we brought in.
Yeah, dude. And not even just taking it back to the linebackers. I mean, Edmonds is somebody I was really hoping it was going to be, just the next set of brothers playing in Pittsburgh, because that would be super fun to, do something like that. Struck out on that, but TJ Edwards, dude. I mean, losing Roquan was disappointing at the time, I'm sure, for a lot of people probably. But now with the, benefit of seeing everything that unfolded and all of that, dude. Because when you think of the Bears, I mean, you think of defense, you think of those linebackers, you think of them doing the tough stuff. Yeah, the trenches still have some work to do, but that duo just going to be stuck there doing that stuff for a long time. I am thrilled. I don't even have a personal stake in this. And I look at those 2 that are going to be just back there hanging out the whole time. And I'm like, oh, damn. God, I don't want to go up against that front right now. No,
it'll be fun. And then the one, Jay, I know that you had mentioned that you this was, I'm rewinding 10, 15 minutes here, that you were upset about Deonta Foreman getting signed, because that's going to hurt Khalil Herbert. I think that's probably the best case scenario. I mean, we knew that they weren't going to go in and say, all right, Khalil Herbert's the guy, we're going to give him 350 touches.
I was hoping it was just Travis Homer. I was just praying for just Travis Homer, but I knew that wasn't a realistic option. But
and I love Deonta Foreman. I really do. I think he's unbelievably talented. I feel like in 2021, when everyone was beating the drum for Adrian Peterson in Tennessee after Derrick Henry went down, I was the guy standing on an island saying, "Don't forget about Deonta Foreman," and he has looked great since 2021. But looking at some of the other available guys, Miles Sanders, they could have brought back David Montgomery, which would have really capped Khalil Herbert. I think Deonta Foreman is probably one of the better options, because there were fears, they were top 3 in Vegas odds to draft Bijan Robinson. I think that they're not going to take Bijan Robinson anymore. There were rumors about them possibly trading up in the 2nd to get a late first pick and get Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, there are a lot of ways that could have completely nuked Khalil Herbert's value. I think that Khalil Herbert actually ends up out-touching Deonta Foreman. The thing that scares me is Foreman probably takes on the majority of the goal line work, but it wouldn't surprise me if both of these guys finish as RB2s, because we know the Bears are going to run the ball a lot, and I think that the touches are going to be split pretty evenly between the 2 of them. So I don't think that this is, terrible news for Khalil Herbert.
I was hoping I had a couple of cheap RB1s at a Khalil Herbert is what I was hoping for, but I'm with you. And it might actually, work out, because people might write him off, especially if they wind up taking a running back somewhere, in the mid to late rounds. So yeah, I'm with you. I love Khalil Herbert next year. He was honestly, most of the time, Dave, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but he seemed to me like he was the better running back on the field this season when he was out there.
By far.
And for fans of Football Outsiders, watching this show or listening to this after the fact in podcast form, I mean, I know I'm a big fan of looking up some of their stats. look at David Montgomery versus Khalil Herbert in the advanced metrics and all that stuff. I mean, like, it gives you some room to be excited. But before we move on to Jay and talk about the New York Giants, Toronto Dave wondering, hey, the Bears maybe going to go wide receiver early in the draft, trading down to 9. Are there too many other holes perhaps for them to, do that? Any sort of thoughts on that?
I think their wide receiver room is pretty set right now. I mean, maybe not the best, but I think you could probably say they're like fringe top 10. DJ Moore probably isn't a top 10 wide receiver, but I think he probably falls inside the top 15 or so. You're not comparing him to AJ Brown or Stephon Diggs. I don't think he's got quite that pedigree, but top 15 I think is pretty fair for DJ Moore. But Darnell Mooney's a hell of a wide receiver too, and I don't think you can get much better than Chase Claypool as a wide receiver 3. So might not be the most top heavy wide receiver room, but it is good. I mean, they're going to have 3 polished good wide receivers out there on 3 wide receiver sets.
And the good news is, because this isn't primarily a fantasy show, I get to say way more nice things about Chase Claypool, because if I'm putting together a real life team, like, dude, he's huge. And he was saying, like, I heard of a quote that he had given talking about he wasn't particularly comfortable being shoved into the slot role in Pittsburgh, which, I kind of get. It's kind of an awkward thing. Similar thing kind of happened with Juju Smith-Schuster, I feel like, although he took to it a lot better than Claypool did. So if they really scheme it up a lot better to fit his skill set, I think that that's going to be absolutely fantastic for them moving forward. And then our pal Joey Wright, after the Baker Mayfield news, talking about his team, he immediately went out and bought a Buccaneers jersey, 13 Caleb Williams. Let's go.
That's terrible, man. But poor Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. I have like 80% exposure on Chris Godwin in my dynasty leagues, and I mean, I'm looking at him now as like a back end wide receiver too. It's sad days for Chris Godwin and Mike Evans.
Yeah. I mean, talking about an overlooked topic on the quarterback carousel, I mean, for the Buccaneers, I mean, like, look, the options weren't great. I would prefer this to Kyle Trask, but
the one bit of silver lining I could find is they upgraded from a 6th round quarterback to the number 1 overall pick.
That is true.
It's like a free first rounder. So, right, I mean, if you think about it.
Although I will say at the beginning of the year, Baker looked more like a 6th round pick than anything else last year. But
I mean, look, when you're not wrong, you're not wrong. So
I'm excited to talk about the Giants, because I've got a lot to say about their moves this offseason.
Okay, all right, I'm interested here. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I will say if I didn't burn all my Giants memorabilia after the boat picture, it's not going to happen. So but it's been pretty tough sledding as a Giants fan over the past few years, but I will say I would give them a 6.5 right now.
Not bad.
I agree. We had to re-sign Daniel Jones unless we were going to make a big move. Like, I would have rather traded the picks and gave Lamar Jackson.
Oh no!
Oh,
we have a frozen friend. Nah, I think we're good. He'll probably come back into the fold at some point.
Am I here?
Oh, yes.
There we go.
There we go.
We're good.
Jay.
See, I got pissed off talking about the Giants, so I don't know. I don't know exactly how much you heard, but we we did overpay a little bit for Daniel Jones, but even though it's only been 1 season, I trust Joe Shane and Brian Daboll. They obviously see that he can be good enough. I don't think he's ever going to be. I know he's never going to be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, but this offense, with guys like Richie James, with Isaiah Hodgins, with Darius Slayton, like, he had a pretty decent season. Now, like I said, he's not worth $40 million, but the move made sense. And we made a couple of redundant signings with bringing back Sterling Shepard. We had Wan'Dale Robinson, signing Paris Campbell today. It makes sense for the scheme, but I would have liked to see some players that do a little bit of different things. I do like that we brought back Isaiah Hodgins, and we saw the Falcons were in on Darius Slayton, but we did wind up re-signing him too. Did fill some holes. We signed Bobby, I believe it's Okikri from the Colts. I could be mistaken on that.
Okereke.
Okay, well, that too.
People say Okereke, and he does not like that. It's Okereke.
Okay. Or yeah, what you said. Didn't know a whole lot about him, but after we signed him, I looked into him, and it looks like he's an absolute perfect fit for Wink Martindale's offense. Again, probably paid him a little too much. It looked like the Bears were in on him as well before they made their signing. So I was happy with that. We've had a smart offseason. I'm really glad we're not making those big giant splashes, no pun intended, overpaying for guys. And we're not there. We need to make these smart moves. Joe Shane said it best. We're not shopping for minimum players anymore. We're making those moves. He wants to build through the draft. That can definitely go up if he nails the draft. I'd love to see us take a wide receiver in the first round, maybe Addison from USC, whoever winds up falling there. We could go with a cornerback. We're likely losing Julian Love, the safety who played really well. So we're trending up. Some things I like, some things I don't like, but overall, I'm happy with the direction of the Giants.
I'm here for the vibe, especially the idea of bringing in Jordan Addison. As Frederick, Maryland's second most famous football figure, I can only advocate for number one going to a really good spot. That would be wonderful to see. But did you mention anything about the Waller thing when you?
Oh, froze? I did not. I did not, but I did want to hit that up. I don't mind it. I think it's a low risk, high reward move. Granted, what we gave up the pick that we got for Tony, which was a first round pick from last year, and it wasn't working. It wasn't the right fit for our system. With that being said, Darren Waller is injury prone, but he has no guaranteed money after this year. So either he's the Darren Waller of a couple years ago, where this team is desperate for pass catching options. And he's something different than all the wide receivers that we have right now. He can get down the field. Gives Daniel Jones right now. He's his top option. He's his most explosive weapon if he's able to stay healthy. Giving up a third round pick for him, no guaranteed money after this, I'm okay with it. It's not anything to get too excited about. I still think we're going to add wide receiver, whether it's through the draft or whether it's free agency. I prefer the draft with the wide receivers that are left on free agency, but we'll see what happens. But I'm okay with the Darren Waller move. And the same thing with Barkley. Like all the moves that we made, I'm okay with. Like there's nothing like I'm super excited about, but I think we're making smart moves.
I think you hit the nail on the head. What you said about Darren Waller, I think just kind of sums up all of the moves that they've made. They are low risk, high reward moves. I mean, you hear it all the time that people say injury prone is a myth, but every single year when it comes to contract negotiations and free agency, injury prone players end up having to take severe discounts. I mean, we just saw Rashad Penny take a huge discount, and that's exactly what the Giants are doing right now, bringing in Darren Waller for relatively cheap, bringing in Paris Campbell for cheap, bringing Saquon Barkley back, obviously on the franchise tag. But really, whether you believe in injury prone or not, every single player that is on the Giants offense right now is in that perceived injury prone bucket. So it sets them up to really kind of evaluate these guys if they can stay healthy. I mean, Sterling Shepard and Wan'Dale Robinson, both injury prone, coming off of injuries as well. So I think you hit it, though. All of these contracts are essentially one-year deals that they can get out of if they don't work this year. But, we saw Paris Campbell finally come into his own last year.
Mm-hmm.
If he can build off of that, sign him to a long-term deal. If Wan'Dale Robinson's able to return from the ACL, you've got a piece in him and you don't need to bring in another slot receiver. So I think that this year is really, even though we already got the evaluation of what Daniel Jones could look like under Brian Daboll last year, this year now we get to evaluate Daniel Jones under Brian Daboll with actual weapons and see who he builds good rapport with so they can build for years forward. I think 6.5 is probably about where I'd gauge it as well. Jay, I like what they're doing this year, though.
Strong vibes.
It's weird to be excited about the future of the Giants. I haven't been excited for the future in a very long time.
It's a nice change of pace. It's a good thing. You get to be optimistic. It's wonderful, especially, because I've had you on, the prior iteration of this program talking about the NFC East in the past. You and I both, it's a weird division to, be a part of, from a fan perspective. But, at this point in time, look, I mean, I don't know.
It's I'm feeling pretty good, man. I got to say, it's one of the better divisions of the NFL with the moves that everybody's making. So
maybe they can make up some ground on the defending NFC champs with some of the moves that they made. But while I look up something that I forgot to look up to prepare to talk about my thing, we actually do have a specific question coming from Ask Ed the Bears fan. The thoughts on Equanimous St. Brown at this point, if there are any.
Yeah, they already brought him back on a 1-year deal, so he's going to be on the team this year. He's going to be the wide receiver 4. Isn't going to be getting a ton of looks now that they brought DJ Moore in, but a very underrated wide receiver. Unfortunately, he struggles with catching the ball, which is the most important part of being a wide receiver. But he's kind of like an Alan Lazard light. Like, he is fantastic in the run game. So when they're running jumbo sets and on early downs, you might see Equinemius St. Brown coming in every now and then. Darnell Mooney, for as good as he is at what he does, he is not a blocker. But you got DJ Moore, who is a very, very physical receiver. You got Chase Claypool, who's essentially a tight end, and then Equinemius St. Brown. I talked about it earlier. Their signings by trading for Claypool and trading for DJ Moore probably indicate that they want to pass the ball a little bit more. But this team's strength is still going to be in the run game. And when they can have DJ Moore, Chase Claypool, Equinemius St. Brown, and Cole Kmet all out on the field at the same time, plowing defenders out of the way for Deonta Foreman and Khalil Herbert, that's what Equinemius St. Brown is going to do best. As far as like fantasy relevance or whether he's going to go for more than 300 yards, I wouldn't bank on it, but he's got an actual good football player that's going to be essential to this run game.
Well, there you go. So not only did we get a good answer, but it also was just enough time for me to remember the first name of one of the people that the Steelers signed so that I could actually talk about them. So here we go. Moving on to grading the Pittsburgh Steelers offseason so far. I don't know. I mean, I feel like we kind of have to grade their free agency on a bit of a curve because this is a team that doesn't typically go out of their way to make the splashy moves, to do all of the big stuff. So, like, there's not a ton of moves that have been made that are, like, eye-popping, but that's just kind of what they do. Even though this is GM Omar Khan's first year, the reins are fully in his control, doing his thing, getting to put his, imprint and impression on the team. I give it, like, a 7. I mean, like, I probably would have felt better about it had I not found out last night that one of the runner-ups in the Orlando Browns sweepstakes was the Steelers. I don't think I really would have cared that he went to the Bengals had I not known that the Steelers were heavily involved. Like, if it had just been, Browns going somewhere else, I'd be like, rats, whatever, because I didn't think the Steelers were going to be in it anyway. So, like, thanks for telling me, NFL reporters. Like, I would have been better if I'd just been shielded from that. But even beyond that, like, I've seen a lot of people get really mad about the amount of money that they paid Larry Ogunjobi, like the 3-year deal, close to $30 million or whatever. But like, you're seeing a lot of what some of these defensive linemen are signing for right now. And the fact that the market is kind of scarce toward like the top end of the talent scale, like you pay what you have to pay to bring a guy back, that did fairly well for the team last season. I'm not super mad about it. But my biggest area of skepticism is the fact that, this is a common trend ever since Ryan Shazier had his unfortunate occurrence in that game that, left him nearly paralyzed. We have been trying to replace the inside linebackers for years. I remember the experiments with John Bostic and Mark Barron, Avery Williamson, bringing in, Joe Schobert from the Jacksonville Jaguars, and even Miles Jack this past offseason. I was like, finally, this will be cool. That'll be great. And then he was limited due to injury and got cut today. So
I was gonna say, did he get cut today? I thought I saw that.
Yeah, so it's like we're constantly re-rolling the dice over and over again, trying to figure this out. So like we cut Jack, Robert Spillane moves on to the Raiders, which makes me really sad because and this is another reason why I'm glad that this is not just a fantasy show, more of a football show, because I love those guys like Robert Spillane. Like, he didn't sign for a ton of money. He's not necessarily a household name, but like if you watch football, like when he gets cycled in and rotated in, like that dude balls. His instincts are just bonkers good. So losing that kind of sucks. But got Cole Holcomb from the Commanders. I'm pretty excited about that. When healthy, he's been super good. He missed a lot of time last year, but like when he's been out there, he's been the only good linebacker the Commanders had. So poaching him is fantastic. And then the first name of the guy that I had to look up was, I think, Elandon Roberts. I asked our buddy Troy King about him for some insight. Still haven't heard back. I don't know how I'm going to feel about it. He's coming over from the Dolphins. From what I can tell, he's a little bit more of the run stuffer guy. So that's kind of cool. And then there's like the 7th rounder, Mark Robinson, that we had from this past cycle. I guess he's going to be part of the 3-man rotation now. But like, it's cool, but I'm just like nervous because it's just another year of them just, hey, we're redoing the whole thing. Let's see if this works this time. Cool. So that kind of brings it down. But the reason it's up at 7 is because now that I know it's not a ton of money, even though he's old, Patrick Peterson. If they draft a cornerback in the first round, hey, but it was cheap. And if he really takes on that mentor role and they go, cornerback early, I think it would be a lot of fun. It's kind of just a more boring version of when we brought in Joe Hayden as like hey, he used to be really good and maybe he could be pretty good again. But, probably with a little more shine to it. And I think for less money. So I feel pretty happy about it so far. But, again, this isn't a team that does a whole lot of exciting stuff at this time of year anyway. I'll have more to react to when it comes to draft time. But does anybody have thoughts on those guys?
Free agency is boring if you're a Steelers or a Packers fan because they just don't do much in free agency. And you'd think that other teams would start to learn, like, hey, look at these two franchises that have been successful for 50 consecutive years. Maybe we should mimic what they're doing and home grow our players. And they don't. Every other team goes out and splashes money in free agency, and it very rarely works out. And it's fun to talk about this time of year. But typically that team that goes wild and is just throwing money around in free agency, does it ever really work out? I mean, very, very rarely. It's what the Steelers do. Homegrown their players is best. And I'm also just still kind of semi in shock from the Jonathan Bostic reference. I haven't heard a John Bostic reference in a long time. I think his best play ever was his rookie season in the preseason, not even his rookie season, preseason, his rookie year for the Bears. I don't know if you remember the hit or not, but it was the first year that Brian Urlacher was not on the Bears. Preseason game, Jonathan Bostic put on one of the nastiest hits I've ever seen on somebody. Bears fans thought he was the next coming of Urlacher, and well, he was just John Bostic.
I mean, he's hanging around doing his thing, 'cause, I mean, like I said before, the Commanders lost their best linebacker in Holcomb, but Bostic has been around doing some things a little bit here and there. He's sticking around somewhere. I get to see a little bit more of him than, I think maybe some other people do just because I'm in the TV market, but he's still kicking. He is still kicking. I will give him credit for that.
And Dave, what you said is what has me excited for the Giants. Is they used to be the team that would go out and spend that money, and they're not doing it. And Joe Shane said one of his keys is building through the draft and re-signing players that they develop. So that's what the Steelers do. They've been successful. I mean, when's the last time they had a losing season? Mike Tomlin's never had one, right? I believe so.
Never.
Yeah. So
no. I don't understand how. But it's true.
He's one of the best coaches in the NFL, if not, he's up there with. And that's what somebody was saying too today. Juju went from Mike Tomlin to Andy Reid, now Bill Belichick. Like, talk about 3 head coaches to play for. It doesn't get much better than that.
I mean, look, if those are the people that are willing to pay you a lot of money and work with you, I think I need to reevaluate my stance. I mean, those are 3 Hall of Fame coaches right there. Name a better trio at this point in time. Active coaches. I don't think you can. I really don't think you can. That says a lot. Folks.
Some guy named Joey just said that he liked and subscribed. So,
there we go. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Thank you. Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. We have one more little parting shot thing before we get ourselves out of here. But yeah, a reminder. This is an unaffiliated podcast. This is something I'm doing in my free time. Just because, I wanted to talk about football. I wanted to practice being on camera and on microphone a little bit more often for my day job. So, if you want to subscribe to my personal YouTube channel, quote unquote, go ahead. There's a button on the screen somewhere that says it, that'd be pretty sick. I don't know. But before we do the thing that gets everybody out of here, because we have just enough time left over for it, I didn't make one of the cool little card things for it. Damn it. Whatever. I tried. Maybe
Can
next time.
Can you describe it, what it would look like?
Yeah, so it would be kind of like this one that we saw before, but instead it would say, call your shot. Where is Lamar Jackson going? Because as we all know, the new league year started. He still hasn't signed a deal yet anywhere. There was that thing, him kind of tweeting about the $133 million over 3 years that he allegedly turned down from Baltimore. Also worth noting, he doesn't have an agent to negotiate on his behalf. He's kind of out here in these streets doing his own thing for himself, which is in its own way kind of cool, but also I can see how it complicates matters. Everybody will go around. Dave, Jay, and then we'll close with me. Where do you think Lamar Jackson is ultimately going to end up?
Is the question, where is he going to play next, or where is he going to play in 2023?
in 2020. Elaborate.
Dave,
I don't.
you
I
and
think he's
I,
holding out this year.
man, we're on the same page. You stole my damn answer, Dave.
I think he gets hit with the franchise tag, and I think he holds out. He's not going to get that big contract. Baltimore's not going to have anything to match, and I don't think he plays on a 1-year franchise tag.
You going with the same thing there, Jay?
That's literally exactly what I was going to say at this point. With I was expecting somebody to go after him, and it looks like the owners are just banding together and not wanting to let these huge guaranteed contracts become the norm, like it with what Cleveland did with Deshaun Watson. And yeah, I think Lamar Jackson is the type of guy that's willing to dig his heels in the ground and do what he thinks is right and what he deserves. And I'm with him. I think he deserves the money. Yeah, I'm with you. I think that he's gonna, if they're not willing to meet his demands, I could see him holding out.
Yeah, I was gonna come up with something, a little spicy, but like that actually just makes too much sense. I think that it's probably either he ends up finding a way to accept playing in Baltimore, or he just doesn't really do it at all. Because like as much as I have disdain for the person who set the precedent of fully guaranteed contracts, it was a really good step in the way of labor progress, which, like not to get political or anything, but, I'm pretty pro labor force when it comes to things like that. But the natural reaction anytime something like that happens is, one small step for labor is 3 steps back in the opposite direction from the people that are signing the checks.
No.
I get why this is hard for him negotiating this right now, because these owners don't want to dole out this money.
Lamar's taking a stand for all of the players right now. It's not just Lamar. Like if he refuses to play, that is a W for every single player in the NFL.
Yep. The one thing I will say that I didn't know, Simon brought it up on the FYF morning show the other day. Apparently, a rule in the NFL is if you guarantee a contract, the owners have to take that money and put it in escrow. I did not know that. So I understand why there's some hesitancy, not, with that being the case,
not everyone's got $250 million.
Right. Exactly. Right. So I understand that, not to say that the guys don't deserve it. They're billionaires for a reason. They're playing the game. They know what they're doing. But that just to add a little bit of context on why maybe, they hesitate just a little bit to make those.
I'm just going to go ahead, Jay. Sorry.
No, I was just saying to make those deals. Like that was done.
I know we're over time, but I get really excited talking about Lamar Jackson. And the one thing I'll say, as much as I think he's going to hold out or end up going back to Baltimore, working something out, what I really want to happen is the Jets to say, we are sick of this Aaron Rodgers smuck jerking us around, and just make a play for Lamar Jackson. How fun would Lamar Jackson be with Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, Breece Hall, Tyler Conklin, that defense? That's what I want to see, is Lamar Jackson playing for the Jets.
I'll add a fun one in there too. It'd be fun to see him in Atlanta with Kyle Pitts, with Drake
too.
London. Put him in that offense. My goodness, that would be so much fun.
He deserves so much better than Baltimore. I'm not a fan of how Baltimore treats their players. Yeah.
I could go all day talking about Lamar Jackson.
Yeah. And, just to close very quickly, this is not one that came off the top of my head. I was just reading through because, shout out The Athletic. I'm a big fan. Shout out Dane Brugler. Really like going through his draft stuff. In his post combine, top 10 scenario that he laid out, he had the mock trade of, well, I guess it's not technically a trade, but Baltimore moving all the way up to 4 because the Colts signed Lamar Jackson in the exchange of the draft pick. So something fun to consider. Shane Steichen coming over from Philly. It seems like a logistical fit to put that archetype of quarterback into that system moving forward. Could be pretty interesting. Also, yes, Joey, it would be a lot of fun to see him in Tampa Bay, but unfortunately, I don't know how they're going to pull that off. But, maybe in the future, maybe we'll see. And maybe we will have more time to discuss Lamar Jackson on the next episode of The Lateral Show with Herms, a sideways look at football. Jay, it looked like you were going to say something.
Nope. Just scratching my nose.
All right, cool. So, yeah, if you enjoyed this, then awesome. If you didn't, nobody's forcing you to ever watch this or listen to it again. But I thought it was a lot of fun with my guests. Starting with Dave, is there anything that you want to promote or tell people about before we sign out?
Nah, just happy to be here.
There we go. Okay, so Jay, anything that you would like to promote or tell people about?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to be here too, but I will say, give us a follow at the Front Yard Fantasy over on our YouTube page.
There you go. And
whatever you want to call it.
Yes. Follow,
I need to go back to
subscribe, like. Look, words are hard, and at this time of night, we don't really have to make a ton of sense anyway. It's all good. But yeah, so my name is Herms. I work at Draft Sharks. You can go to draftsharks.com if you want to see more serious thoughts come from my brain. There's no outro video or anything. So until next time, goodbye, everybody. There's a show
kazoo?
next week. Oh, that's smart. Yeah.